Tonight's reading is from Matthew 16:24-26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good it would be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul?" This is the word of the Lord.
Good evening, church. It's good to see you all, sort of. It's one of those things when you preach in an evening, you can't really see people's faces. And I quite like it when I preach to be able to see the shock and the horror that people have whenever I say something. My name's Peter. I'm one of the members of the church here. And in my day life, I work for a company, a big energy company, and I was an electrician, but I've recently moved over, and my job now is to break things for a living. So what I do is every tool that goes out to engineers in the field, every bit of product that goes out to engineers in the field, whether it be plumbing products or electrical products, I get to try and break them first to try and see if they're good enough. And so it's always a pleasure when Jit and Elaine ask me to come and speak, so I can try and break things again. And hopefully God can bring it back together. No, we know that God can bring it back together. So I am going to speak this evening on the cross. We've been doing a 5-week series on this, and this is the last week in this series. We started by talking about the cross and the tear that happened because of the cross. We talked about the gift. We talked about the victory. Last week, Jit talked about the message. And then this week, we're going to be talking about the life. And it's all about different perspectives of the cross. It all means the same thing, but it doesn't matter whether you're a brand new person who's just walked in off the street, or whether actually you've been here a million times and you've heard about the cross so many times. There's always something new that we can learn about the cross. And so I just want to ask you for a couple of minutes just to turn to your neighbor and just to share with them one or two things that maybe stand out in your mind from the last 4 weeks regarding the cross. What's jumped out from something that somebody said about the cross? Or if you've never been to church before and this is your first week at this church and you don't know the last 4 weeks, just what does the cross mean to you? Because you'll have a thought about it. So just share with your neighbors for a couple of minutes, maybe as an idea or concept that's been standing out to you, or what does the cross mean to you? I'm so glad that the series has been really insightful for people, because that's really good, isn't it? That actually people have things that stand out to them, things that maybe they've learned for the first time, or you've been reminded of. Because what happens is, the more you walk on this journey, the more you forget. I've probably forgotten more about Jesus than I've ever learned, and it's one of those things that it's so good to be reminded of those basics that sometimes we overlook, and the importance of the cross, the importance of Jesus. I have to confess that I struggle a little bit with the symbol of the cross. It's a symbol that it doesn't matter which church you walk into, you'll see it. It's there at the front often, or somewhere around about there will be a cross. And actually, we often come across the cross in our day-to-day lives. We'll know somebody who maybe wears a cross necklace, or has a cross tattoo, or they have something in their house to do with the cross. And it's something that we come across, it's almost become just that image that's just there. But it's weird, isn't it? Because this thing stood right next to me is not a nice thing. Don't know how many of you ever watched the Passion movie. It's not like the old 1960s movies of Jesus, where Jesus gets a little bit of a whip and, almost like he was a rapscallion, gets sent off. The Passion does it justice, because it shows you the blood, the sweat, the tears that Jesus had to go through. The cross, for the first century listeners, for the people who Jesus spoke this to, was an implement of torture. And not a nice implement either. This wasn't something that you just got over. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was horrific. We never see these things anymore. Thankfully, this is not something we come across in our day-to-day lives. But actually, a cross was something to be shamed, to be fearful of. For the original Romans, it was so bad that it was reserved for the worst kind of criminals. It was so bad that if you were a Roman citizen, you weren't allowed to be crucified. Just by the very passport that you carried, the cross was off limits, because the Romans themselves, who came up with this form of torture and punishment and execution, knew how awful it was, that they would not put any of their own through this. Could you imagine having a form of torture so bad that you would reserve it for people that were other, that you classified as less than yourself? And yet this is the symbol that we have. This is the symbol that we shout about, that we proclaim. This cross here is quite small. It's quite neat. Wasn't too hard for me to carry, even though it has a big metal base. When Jesus carried his cross to Calvary, he didn't carry the whole thing. The likelihood is that there was the upright post was already in place, and Jesus just had to carry this bit here. But before getting to the cross, Jesus had already been beaten and whipped within an inch of his life. And this here is quite a nice little thing. I could probably carry this quite far. But the beam that Jesus and other criminals had to carry was probably 8 by 8 inches. So it was probably 4 times the depth and 4 times the depth and twice the height. And it would have been as long as their arm span was. This was not just something that they could carry. It wasn't just an afternoon walk. When I hear people talk about, take up your cross and follow me, I'm guilty of just saying, oh yeah. It's just those things that come along, those niggles, those struggles that I have in life. That's me carrying my burden. That's me being a good Christian. When my kids wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and jump all over me, and all I want to do is just shout and scream at them, I just remind myself, oh, yeah, this is me. This is what the Lord meant when he said I had to deny myself and carry my cross. When I have a disagreement with somebody at work, or somebody doesn't like me, I think to myself, oh, this is what Jesus meant when he said, I've got to deny myself and carry my cross. I don't think it did. Those things that come and go in life. We were never promised an easy life, but actually, the things that we face in our world today, at least in the West, is minuscule. It's hard to wrap our head around what Jesus was actually talking about. This passage takes place earlier on in Matthew 16. Jesus asks his disciples, and he says to them, who do people say that I am? He's interested. Who do you say I am? And some people thought he was John the Baptist. Some people thought he was Elijah. Some people thought he was a prophet. They're all decent answers. But Jesus drilled down and he said, who do you say I am? When we look at the cross, the question that Jesus is going to be asking each and every single one of us is, who do you say that I am? Because that is fundamental when we get to the idea of denying ourselves and taking up our cross. If we don't know who Jesus is, and I mean really, truly know who Jesus is, then by the time we get to verse 24, it's just going to be too overwhelming. Peter says to Jesus, you are the Messiah. You're the one who has come to bring about God's reconciliation with the world. You're the one who's going to come and change everybody's life. You're the one that's going to come and bring this reunification of God and his people. And then Jesus starts saying, we read in verse 21, from then on, Jesus began to point out to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, he must suffer many things from the elders, the chief priests, the scribes, and be killed, and he would be raised again on the third day. Do you know when we talk about Easter, it's easy to forget that actually Jesus had already told the disciples the plan of action. We think of it that actually the disciples were unaware that Jesus was going to die. And even worse, that they were unaware that he was going to be raised again. Jesus prepared them. He told them, right guys, we're heading to Jerusalem. Just to let you know, it's going to get a bit dicey down there. People are going to want to kill me, and this time I'm going to let them. I'm going to let them grab me, and they're going to put me to death. But do you know what the secret is? 3 days later, I'll be back again. I'll have defeated death, I'll have defeated sin, reunification will have happened. He told his disciples everything. And his disciples, like me, when it was in the midst of it all, just slipped out the back of their minds. I don't know if you've ever been in the middle of a storm in life, and maybe you can come to church and you can say, yes, Jesus is my Lord, and I know he's there. I know he wants to bless me. I know that he wants the best for me. I know that actually my reward is not on earth, my reward is in heaven. But when things go to pot in our life, I'm the first one to forget about it. Oh, Jesus, you said you would be with me, and I can't feel you. You said that you would go before me. You said that you would bless me, that I would get, if everything that I said I asked for would be given to you. You ask and you shall receive. I'm still waiting for that Ferrari car that Jesus promised me. Don't think it quite works like that, does it? Or if it does, I need a better manual. God doesn't promise us life will be easy. And he gives us the roadmap. He tells us that we will face difficult situations. And Peter's the first one, a brilliant namesake of mine, because he acts just like me. His mouth works quicker than his brain, and he says things that he instantly regrets. Have you ever had that before? That you say something you thought, I shouldn't have said that. I have it all the time. And Jesus has to put Peter in his place. Quite strongly, I might add. Behind me, Satan. Could you imagine if you said something to somebody, a friend of yours, and they turned around to you and said, behind me, Satan? And then this is where Jesus goes on to say, he's just told them that he's got to go to Jerusalem, that he's going to die, and he's going to rise again. He's just rebuked Peter, and he says to them, if anyone wants to come with me, he must deny himself. He must take up his cross, and he must follow me. Wow. Jesus isn't talking about a little walk in the park. When Jesus says, take up my cross, he is talking to a people who knew what that meant. I don't know how many of you are fans of the Game of Thrones series. All good Christians are obviously fans of the Game of Thrones series. It's not really something to be talking about, really, is it? But there's a brilliant visual of this where Cersei, who is queen, and she's a very proud, and she's one of the main antagonists in Game of Thrones. And the city is overtaken by a group of clerics who want to revolutionize the city and to turn it all to this way of working. And so what they do is, because Cersei has gone against them, they force her to walk through the city naked. And people get to chuck things at her and hurl abuse at her. And this is a lady who is known for being proud and arrogant and always standing her ground. And she has to walk through the city and be shamed with every single step. That's the closest I can get from a modern context to what carrying your cross was like. To carry a crossbar for a cross is not something you can put in your handbag or put in your backpack. It's not something that you can hide and slightly kind of jaunt along with. It takes physical exertion. It takes all of your effort. It takes all of your energy to heave this thing up, to lift it up, and to carry it and to bear it. Everybody sees. We talk about nailing your colors to the mast. It's a place of shame. In Matthew's gospel earlier on, Jesus actually tells the disciples this exact same thing, that they must take up their cross. In Matthew chapter 10 and verse 38, Jesus says, and whoever doesn't take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Friends, for those of us who have had an encounter with Christ, for those of us who know the life-transforming power of the cross, the act of taking up our cross is not optional. It's mandated. And this is a point where Jesus, earlier on in that chapter, he says, don't assume that I come to bring peace on earth. I don't come to bring peace, but a sword. For I come to turn man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his household. This is serious business. When Jesus says to take up your cross, it's not something to do lightly. It's not something that you can just come to church, say the liturgy, sing the right songs. It's a whole of life experience. When Jesus calls us to take up our cross, do you know what? We'd love to see peace in this world. And we do believe that Jesus is the peacemaker. But at the same time as being the peacemaker, Jesus himself says, unfortunately, I've not come to bring peace at this time, but the sword. I've got a friend who, when she came to faith at the age of 16, her mum and dad kicked her out into the streets. They took her Bible, they put it in the front garden, and they burnt it in front of her eyes. There are men and women, boys and girls around this world who physically get beaten, who physically have to do manual labor day in, day out, because they've said, I know Jesus. There are men and women, boys and girls out there who know what it means to take up their cross, to deny themselves, and to follow Jesus. And this is why I struggle with the cross. Because how can I, as privileged as I am, truly understand what that means? How can I, as privileged as I am, really understand what it means to put myself in that place of shame? How can I deny myself? What does that even mean? There's an old song that I used to sing which goes, J-O-Y, J-O-Y, surely it must be. Jesus first, yourself last, and others in between. Brilliant little chorus. But actually, it totally messes with this idea of self-denial. Because actually, for me, growing up, it was easy to deny myself. Because actually, Jesus was first, and then everybody else was more important. And so self-denial came really easy. Because I was able to say, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of the love of Jesus. I'm not worthy of the life that Jesus gave me. And so I will sacrifice. I'll give up this, I'll give up that, I'll give up the other. And it came very easy. But I can tell you now, that wasn't self-denial. Because in order to deny self, you have to have self-worth and self-value. And I'm still trying to work on that. How can I really deny myself, deny what God is calling me to, if it's so easy for me to just chuck myself on the rubbish tip? What does it mean to deny yourself? For each and every single one of us, self-denial will look slightly differently. I'm so grateful to God that I don't have to physically take on self-denial. That actually, I could go out into the street, I can go into work, and I can tell people about Jesus. I can tell them about the amazing person he is. I can tell them about how he transformed my life. And I don't have to worry about physical consequences. But is that really self-denial? And so how do I really get there? Each one of us has something that we cling to, something that we seek after, that we say is a must, is a need. And I don't know what that is for you. Self-denial is daily taking that need and saying, Jesus, I give it to you. Is that financial security for you? Are you chasing after the best education, the best job that you can possibly get? Because actually the idea is that if you have the big house, if you have the wages, yes, you can give those wages back to God. You can give something of that, but at least you'll be safe, you'll be secure. Is it that you're seeking after friends? Is it seeking after somebody who will love you, who will accept you for who you are? That's what Jesus wants you to give up. Jesus wants you to give up the thing that you cling after, because actually that there is holding you back from truly seeking freedom in God. And you have a choice. This here is a symbol of torment, of punishment, of death. But because of Jesus, this is a symbol of life. It is a symbol of hope. It is a symbol of light. It is a symbol of transformation. Are you trying to cling on to life as you know it? Or are you prepared to deny yourself? Take up your cross and follow Jesus.